I recently heard the quote, "The people who want to be left alone always lose," attributed to the difference between how conservatives and liberals relate to power and a paradigm for why conservatives usually lose. This was followed by a historic example that the South was probably kicking itself in '65, wishing they had marched on Washington after the Battle of Bull Run. Doug, what do you make of this? Should conservatives rethink how they relate to power?
Yes, they should have marched on Washington after Bull Run. That was a mistake, and it was driven by principle. Actually, it was really interesting that in that war, almost all of the war was fought in the South or in the border state of Maryland. The one signal difference was Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, and that was late in the war, and it was sort of a Rubicon. Like the South did not want to make war on the North as another country. They didn't want to defeat the North. They just wanted to be separate from the North. And it goes back to the question. They just wanted to be left alone, do their own thing. But one of the principles of war is objective. What you can't just detach and say, I'm a non-combatant now, because the other guy's in charge of whether you're a combatant. Now you can't just say, leave me alone, because the other guy's in charge of whether or not you're going to be left alone, right? So there has to be a certain measure of proactive aggressiveness, preventative deterrence in these things. So, yeah, you want to be left alone. Your house should be armed as though you want to be left alone.
Do you think that change in how we relate to power is actually happening among conservatives? Do you think there's a sea change from leave me alone to no, we'll take the hill?
Yeah, I do believe that's happening, and that's causing some consternation in certain quarters, because you conservatives are supposed to be the ones who want to be left alone, which is what turns you into the punching bag. We're going to play a football game, and you will always have the ball, and we will always play defense. Well, that's not how it works. So I believe that there's a certain restiveness among young conservatives, and again, I think that there's a place where that could overshoot and violate the principle, because there are ways in which we ought to leave them alone. You know, it's not that the whole world is my business. It's not that I've got to go fix everybody, but I can refuse to leave them alone to the extent necessary to ensure that they will leave me alone. An armed society is a polite society.
Does that put you at odds with Tolkien, who says just throw the ring of power into the fire, destroy it?
Yeah, the ring of power in that story had to be destroyed because it was evil. It wasn't power; it was evil power. So how the book ends after the ring is thrown into Mount Doom, Aragorn is crowned king, and he's not crowned chief advisor or career counselor. He's crowned a king, and he's a great warrior. So Aragorn has authority and power and dominion, and all of those things are things that he has and should gladly take up. But he doesn't take up evil power. So the ring is not a metaphor for power. The ring is a metaphor for the kind of power that Sauron baked into the ring. So it would corrupt whoever used it, and it could even corrupt some at a distance. Boromir succumbed to the allure of the ring when it was just in his proximity. So I believe that Christians involved in politics should wield power, but they should wield power within certain defined limits. So I'm reading a book now, Disarming Leviathan, on how to love your Christian nationalist neighbor, which is just an awful book. But what he keeps repeating in the chapter I just finished, he keeps repeatedly saying that Christian nationalists want to take up the sword, and use power to achieve their ends. That's what politics is, right? It's not like Christian nationalists want to do this and nobody else does. It's everything has to do with what you're going to use your power to do. So the collectivists who are in power now use the power of the sword to extort money from middle-class working taxpayers in order to redistribute that money to other people who shouldn't be getting it. That's how they use their power. If we had power, we would stop abortionists. But both sides are using power. The way you measure or evaluate the virtue or the vice in the wielding of power is, what are you using the power for? What are you doing? Are you using the sword to attack the defenseless, or are you using the sword to defend the defenseless?
Does absolute power corrupt? Absolutely.
In creatures, yes. God has absolute power, and he's not corrupted or corruptible, but he's the only one who can have that kind of power. Everyone else has to have bounded, limited power. So it was Lord Acton who said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that is true, with the exception of God. God is absolute. God has absolute power, and he is immortal, infinite, all-powerful. He's not corrupted. But whenever he dispenses power to creatures, it's always bounded. It's always limited.
What are some practical things you'd say to a guy, like, as he's living, he finds that he is getting, he's exercising greater responsibility and therefore obtaining greater authority, and he understands that there's growth there. What kind of things does he need to be doing as he receives more power?
He needs to keep doing it. So you need to dance with the one what brung you. If he has been laying down his life sacrificially, and I've said for years that authority flows to those who take responsibility, and authority flees those who try to evade responsibility. So if a man has learned how to take responsibility in his home, and he grows in authority in his home, and his wife and his kids respect him highly, he takes responsibility in his church, and he finds himself people looking to him for leadership and direction. He's growing in authority. The one thing he needs to do is make sure to keep doing that. It never stops. It's not like you're having a good run at the blackjack table, and then all of a sudden you freeze and gather your winnings and go do something else. You're supposed to be laying down your life for others until you die, and that means the process has to be ongoing. So God blesses you with a certain measure of authority, but Christian authority is always authority that bleeds. It can't thrive any other way. And so if a man has been given a measure of authority, he needs to be looking to God. How can I put this on the altar? How can I be a living sacrifice? Romans 12:1 and 2. I want this also to be a living sacrifice. And it's like the farmer with the seed corn. He puts the seed in the ground, and 30, 60, and 100-fold, and he takes the crop and he puts it back in the ground. That's what we need to keep doing.
Flames. Conclusion.